Can there be a speaker so courageous and audacious that Western media feels compelled to censor their presence? Minister Louis Farrakhan, the leader of the Nation of Islam, is a prime example of such a figure. His fearless critique of Western actions has rendered him effectively invisible in mainstream media coverage.
I don't think this is the appropriate forum.
Well, no, I'm just trying
discuss.
to. I don't either, but I'm just trying to find out.
Farrakhan has critically exposed the West, unveiling perspectives and truths that challenge the prevailing narratives. Consequently, the media has been unable to provide him with the platform he merits.
Now, where are you going? Are you going then back to the homeland? Are you going back to the African continent? Is that your idea?
You know, again, all of these black people here have a stake here. We have a stake here, I think, that is more valid than those who just came here a few days, a few years ago. These are the children of those who built this. So yes, we can go there or we can stay here. If we stay here, then why not separate and give to the children of those who built this country land and reparations that we may go and do something for ourselves. Now, I did mention
the difference between the narratives presented by Western media and Farrakhan's revelations highlights a stark contrast, with Farrakhan's account often providing a more coherent and compelling explanation. This divergence in viewpoints explains why his insights are not featured in mainstream media. But what precisely has Farrakhan revealed? Let's find out. Narratives coming from all sources are often constructed and manipulated to serve the interests of powerful nations. Yet, every so often, a voice rises to challenge these narratives, peeling back the layers of deception to reveal the truths beneath. Minister Louis Farrakhan, leader of the Nation of Islam, is one such voice. In a compelling address, Farrakhan exposed deceitful tactics employed by Western powers in the intervention and subsequent assassination of Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. But that's not it. He revealed many things that Western media is too scared to tell you. The first thing he addressed was Muammar Gaddafi. Muammar Gaddafi, the revolutionary leader who ruled Libya for over 4 decades, left behind a complex legacy. Farrakhan's address sheds light on Gaddafi's significant achievements, both within Libya and across the African continent. He says the West hates him. To understand why Gaddafi became such a target for Western powers, it is crucial to first appreciate the scale of his contributions.
Why are you angry with him? What has he done to bring down on him the wrath of the West? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said to me, the 3 most hated of men are 1, a rich man who gives away his wealth to the poor, a wise man who shares his knowledge with the ignorant, and the man to whom the Holy Quran is revealed. Why do you hate Gaddafi? Does he share the wealth of Libya with the poor? Well, if he does, and he does, doesn't that make you, America, look bad?
In Libya, Gaddafi used the country's vast oil wealth to transform what was once a poor, underdeveloped nation into one of the most prosperous in Africa. Under his leadership, Libya achieved remarkable improvements in infrastructure, healthcare, and education. For instance, the literacy rate, which stood at a dismal 20% when Gaddafi seized power in 1969, soared to 83% by the early 2000s. Life expectancy also increased dramatically, rising from 44 years to 75 years, thanks to advancements in public health and the establishment of a robust healthcare system that was the envy of the developing world. One of Gaddafi's most ambitious projects was the Great Man-Made River, a $33 billion initiative to create a vast irrigation network across the Sahara Desert. This project, often hailed as the 8th wonder of the world, aimed to provide fresh water to the arid regions of Libya, enabling the country to achieve greater food self-sufficiency and reduce its dependency on imported goods.
This was a man that gave free medical attention to all the citizens of Libya, and if Libya did not offer that kind of medical attention, they could fly anywhere in the world and get it, and the Libyan government
would pay for it. Did you know that? No, you didn't.
Beyond Libya's borders, Gaddafi envisioned a united Africa, free from the economic and political domination of Western powers. He was a vocal advocate for the creation of the African Union (AU) and played a pivotal role in its establishment in 2002. Gaddafi's vision for the AU went beyond mere political cooperation. He sought to unite Africa into a powerful economic bloc, capable of competing with other global powers on equal footing. His investments in African infrastructure, including the funding of an African satellite to reduce dependency on European telecommunications, were part of his broader strategy to foster self-reliance and break free from the lingering influence of colonialism. Gaddafi's push for African unity also extended to economic policies. He encouraged African nations to move away from the export of raw materials, a legacy of colonial exploitation, and instead focus on producing and exporting finished goods. This, he believed, would help African countries retain more value within the continent and reduce their vulnerability to the fluctuations of global commodity markets. Despite these achievements and his vision for a united Africa, Gaddafi's actions placed him in direct conflict with Western powers. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. So, why was Gaddafi seen as a threat to Western interests?
America is ruled by special interests, not by the needs, rights, and interests.
Gaddafi's bold vision for Africa, combined with his refusal to cooperate with Western economic and military agendas, made him a formidable opponent in the eyes of Western powers. Farrakhan argued that the NATO-led intervention in Libya was not about protecting civilians or promoting democracy, as was publicly claimed, but rather about removing a leader who posed a significant threat to Western interests in Africa. One of the key factors that made Gaddafi a target was his opposition to the new Economic Partnership for Africa's Development (NEPAD), a Western-backed initiative aimed at promoting economic growth and development in Africa. Gaddafi saw NEPAD as a tool for maintaining Western control over Africa's resources and sought to develop alternative strategies that prioritized African self-sufficiency and independence. His efforts to establish a pan-African currency, backed by Libya's gold reserves, were particularly alarming to Western powers, as it threatened the dominance of the US dollar and the euro in African trade. Gaddafi was also a staunch critic of AFRICOM, the US military's Africa Command, which he viewed as a thinly veiled attempt to militarize Africa and secure Western access to the continent's vast natural resources. His refusal to allow AFRICOM to establish a base in Libya, coupled with his efforts to rally other African leaders against the initiative, further solidified his position as a thorn in the side of Western powers. Farrakhan pointed out that Gaddafi's assassination was not an isolated event, but part of a broader pattern of targeting African leaders who resisted Western influence. He noted that other African leaders who opposed Western economic and military policies, such as Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso and Patrice Lumumba of the Congo, also met violent ends. According to Farrakhan, these assassinations were part of a deliberate strategy to maintain control over Africa and prevent the emergence of strong, independent leaders who could challenge Western hegemony. The NATO-led intervention in Libya, which involved a relentless bombing campaign that devastated the country, ultimately succeeded in toppling Gaddafi's regime. However, Farrakhan argued that the true cost of this intervention was not just the loss of Gaddafi's life, but the destabilization of Libya and the broader region. The power vacuum left by Gaddafi's death led to the rise of armed militias, human trafficking, and the spread of extremist groups, turning Libya from a stable and prosperous nation into a failed state. The assassination of Gaddafi and the subsequent chaos in Libya highlight the hypocrisy of Western powers, who claim to champion democracy and human rights, yet engage in violent interventions to protect their interests. But how does the media contribute to the deception of the public? The role of the media in shaping public perception cannot be overstated. Farrakhan's address highlighted the complicity of mainstream media in perpetuating the false narratives used to justify the intervention in Libya and the assassination of Gaddafi. He argued that the media, far from being an impartial observer, has been co-opted by the same interests that drive Western foreign policy, effectively becoming a tool of propaganda. One of the most glaring examples of media deception during the Libyan conflict was the portrayal of Gaddafi as a brutal dictator who needed to be removed to save the lives of innocent civilians. The media repeatedly broadcast images and reports that depicted Gaddafi's forces committing atrocities against their people, creating a sense of urgency and moral justification for intervention. However, many of these reports were later revealed to be exaggerated or outright false, designed to rally public support for military action. Farrakhan pointed out that while the media was quick to demonize Gaddafi, it remained largely silent on the atrocities committed by NATO forces and the rebel groups they supported. The extensive bombing campaign carried out by NATO, which resulted in the deaths of thousands of Libyan civilians and the destruction of critical infrastructure, was downplayed or ignored by mainstream outlets. Instead, the focus remained on Gaddafi's alleged crimes, reinforcing the narrative that his removal was both necessary and just. This selective reporting, Farrakhan argued, is indicative of a broader pattern of media manipulation. The same media outlets that condemned Gaddafi for his actions in Libya have often turned a blind eye to similar or worse actions committed by Western governments. For example, the assassination of Osama bin Laden by US forces, which involved a raid on foreign soil and the killing of an unarmed suspect, was widely celebrated as a triumph of justice. Similarly, the use of drone strikes by the United States, which have resulted in the deaths of hundreds of civilians in countries like Pakistan, Yemen, and Somalia, is rarely subjected to the same level of scrutiny or condemnation. Farrakhan argued that this double standard reveals a deep hypocrisy at the heart of Western foreign policy. While Western leaders frequently invoke the language of human rights and democracy, their actions often betray a willingness to engage in violence and coercion when it serves their interests. The media, by selectively reporting on these actions and shaping public perception, plays a crucial role in maintaining this facade. So, now we know the West manipulates. What steps can Africans and the diaspora take to resist Western manipulation?
Look at how this man is working. Look at this. Brothers, how did you become a gang? Do you know what they're doing? They are manipulating a natural process of human development.
Farrakhan's address was not merely an expose of Western deception, it was also a call to action for Africans and those in the diaspora. He urged them to awaken to the realities of global power dynamics and to take concrete steps toward achieving genuine autonomy and self-sufficiency. According to Farrakhan, the key to breaking free from Western dominance lies in a unified and strategic approach that prioritizes African interests over external pressures.
That there is the possibility of some of us returning to Africa. Africa is in need of the scholarship that we have gained from our sojourn in America. And just as England let go some of her convicts who had no hope, languishing in prisons, to help build this.
One of the first steps Farrakhan recommended was a reevaluation of Africa's economic relationships with the rest of the world. He argued that African nations must resist the temptation to engage in exploitative trade deals that favor Western corporations at the expense of local economies. Instead, Africa should focus on developing its industries, producing finished goods, and adding value to its natural resources before exporting them. This, he argued, would not only create jobs and stimulate economic growth within Africa, but also reduce the continent's dependency on foreign powers. Farrakhan also called for greater political unity among African nations. He pointed to the African Union (AU) as a crucial platform for advancing African interests on the global stage, but he emphasized that the AU must be more than just a symbolic organization. To be effective, the AU must have the power to enforce decisions, resolve conflicts, and protect the sovereignty of its member states. Farrakhan urged African leaders to strengthen the AU and to work together to address the continent's challenges, rather than relying on external interventions. Education was another area that Farrakhan highlighted as critical for the empowerment of Africans and the diaspora. He argued that the current education systems in many African countries, which are often based on colonial models, do not adequately prepare young Africans to tackle the challenges of the modern world.
Oftentimes, the leader is the greatest fighter among you. In fact, the leader whips you. So when he beats you physically, you submit to him. You become his boys, his group. Now check this out. In white neighborhoods, they take this courage and bravery and will to win, this aggressive tendency in young people. It's not false. It's a natural tendency in young men to be aggressive, to want to show strength. That's our rite of passage into maturity. We're growing up now. I'm as strong as you, so I'll test my muscle against your muscle. I'll test my strength against your strength. I'll put my hands up and shoot out a few jabs to see if you know how to defend yourself. Is that right? So, this is growing up. We ain't got no YMCA. We don't have nobody to direct that energy among us, but among white people, they see the same energy. So they take their groups and they form a little league. They form a baseball team. They form a football team. They form a basketball team. They form a boxing team. And all of your hostility and aggression, you work it out in team sport. The will to win makes you a winner in baseball, a winner in basketball. The courage is seen in how you work with your team. Your bravery is that there is a remedy. Allah doesn't show us what the enemy is planning without giving us a way to overcome his plan. The fact that it has not yet happened is about to happen, and somebody among you sounds the alarm. That's God's mercy to you.
Farrakhan called for a reformation of these systems to focus on science, technology, and entrepreneurship, as well as African history and culture. By equipping the next generation with the knowledge and skills they need to succeed, Africa can build a more prosperous and independent future. Farrakhan's call to action also extended to the African diaspora, particularly those in the United States and Europe. He urged them to reconnect with their roots and to play an active role in supporting the development of Africa. This could take the form of investments in African businesses, the transfer of skills and technology, or advocacy for policies that benefit Africa rather than exploit it. Farrakhan emphasized the importance of solidarity between Africans and the diaspora, arguing that their combined efforts could create a powerful force for change. While the challenges facing Africa and the diaspora are immense, Farrakhan's address offered a vision of hope and possibility. By uniting and working together, Africans and those in the diaspora can resist Western manipulation and build a future that is truly their own. Do you think Africa united can fight all the manipulation? Are Africans still Western targets? When will this hate end? Let us know in the comments section should leaders like Traore be also careful. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.